in today's programme. Middlesex school children research a priceless archive, revel in Tudor costumes and put on a play fit for a king.
Amen. Amen.
When it comes to teaching history, having access to contemporary documents and artefacts is invaluable. The National Archives in Kew, on the outskirts of London, contain a unique record of 1,000 years of British history. It may come as a surprise that most of this priceless collection is available for the inspection by the general public. Today we are going to follow a primary class in a quest to learn more about King Henry VIII. The children are going to do some historical research at Kew and then travel to Hampton Court Palace to take part in a right royal joust.
The aim of a right royal joust is to enable pupils really to investigate the character of Henry VIII through the images and the documents that have been left behind from the period. It's very different from some of the other workshops that we run because it's a unique collaboration between us, the National Archives, and the institution of Hampton Court. So it enables pupils not only to look at the documents that were created at the time of Henry VIII here at the archives, they're seeing where the documents are kept, how documents are kept, and then they're visiting Hampton Court, a completely different site that Henry VIII spent much of his time at, where some of the events that are described in these documents actually took place. And they're seeing Hampton Court as a document, in a sense, as another way of learning about King Henry VIII and the Tudor period.
For Val Salter and her Year 5 class from Stanley Junior School, the day begins at the National Archives in Kew.
It's just such a fantastic trip. It's not often that you can get to see genuine documents 500 years old, and it really inspires the children.
The National Archives is this country's official government archive. It has records going back to Domesday Book, which is our first official government record, and the records come all the way up to the most modern record releases that you'll see mentioned in the media. And it includes things like Henry VIII's letters and documents, Shakespeare's will, Dam Buster records, Jack the Ripper files, and all sorts of other fascinating documents. For Henry VIII, we have basically his official records. He was the government as such, and so we have all sorts of correspondence, we have records of what happened at court, we have accounts, and we have some of his personal papers relating to marriage settlements and the dissolution of the monasteries.
On this document, we've actually got a picture of a very famous Tudor king. Now I want you to look very carefully at this Tudor king, and I want you to tell me which Tudor king you think it is. What do you think, boys? What do you think?
Could it be young Henry VIII?
Young Henry VIII, that's a good answer. This young historian here was spot on. This was painted when he first came to the throne. He was a very young king at that time. We're offering pupils the opportunity to see documents that were created at the time of some of the most important events in history by some of the most important people. And it's providing them with the evidence that these events really did occur, they really did happen. So they're not taking on trust, as it were, the words of historians written in history books, but they can actually return to the original evidence, the source material themselves. What I've got here, it's actually kept under lock and key normally, so you're so lucky to see it. This is pure gold. Look at that. This is the gold seal, not of Henry, but it's actually the gold seal of the French king.
Some of the reactions of the children were fantastic. When they brought the gold seal out that Henry had used at the Field of the Cloth of Gold with the King of France, just to see that solid gold was magnificent. You know, the children just were overwhelmed by it.
So you can now go home today and say that you have seen the King of France, King Francis I, gold seal all the way from 1527. I'm going to close it away now, but that's a very exciting one. But I've got some other documents to show you. This document here is a letter from one of King Henry VIII's wives. It's the second wife that lost her head. Can anyone remember who that was?
Catherine Howard.
Well done, Catherine Howard. So she lost her head. Do you know why she lost her head? Why she was executed?
Because Henry thought that she was cheating on him.
He did. He thought that she had other boyfriends apart from him, the king. Now this is evidence that she did indeed have another boyfriend. He was a man called Thomas Culpeper, and this is one of the love letters that she wrote to him. And in fact, it's the only evidence that survives, that's left in the whole world, to prove that she had another lover apart from the king. And she's written right at the bottom of this letter, and you can see here she's put, "Yours, as long as life endures, Catherine." It's quite romantic, really. It would be more romantic if it had been written to the king, wouldn't it? But no, it was written to her lover, Thomas Culpeper. And this was shown to King Henry VIII of proof of what she'd been doing. And of course, after that, King Henry VIII had to send her away. He sent her to the Tower of London, and eventually, you're quite right, she lost her head.
Here at the National Archives, we think we know everything that's in our collection, but given the size of the collection, that it covers nearly 1,000 years, there's 100 miles of shelving, there are many documents that I've come across that don't look like they've been accessed for hundreds and hundreds of years. So I think without a doubt one can say that there are secrets waiting to be discovered here at the National Archives.
Put your hand up and tell me, who do you think I might be?
One document only recently discovered in the archives is an entertainment for Henry VIII, written by the Tudor poet John Skelton. The children are going to reconstruct the performance with the help of Master Webb.
Master Webb plays the part of a yeoman of the revels. Now, the revels department was an entertainment department at the time of Henry VIII, and the revels were responsible for organising things such as jousting, the masks, the performances that took place, and the disguising balls, the masked balls that were also held.
A masque is a name for a special kind of play. It is a play that ladies are allowed to take part in, because ladies aren't allowed to take part in any other sorts of plays.
The masque is incredibly important because it was discovered here by staff at the National Archives about 6 years ago. And of course, before this, it had not been performed since Henry VIII's time. So we've really brought something back from the pages of history, and we've brought it back to life so that pupils can perform it and bring it to the audience once again at Hampton Court.
So we're going to York, 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 York. Off you go. York, York. Gallop like a horse, gallop like a
Before they are ready to leave to Hampton Court, there's some rehearsing to be done under Master Webb's critical eye.
So try not to drop the crown.
Meanwhile, another group of children are set to work making props for the mask.
Can you see?
Yeah.
King Henry was very fond of masks, often performing in them himself. They were very exciting and special events, and the Revels office would go to great lengths to prepare the lavish materials needed. With the preparations complete, it's time to head off for Hampton Court.
We sailed up the river from Kingston because it's how people in Tudor times would arrive at Hampton Court. Some children haven't been on a boat before, so it all adds to the specialness of the day. And it's also very powerful when you see Hampton Court and you arrive on the river and get that view, because it is so impressive.
Henry VIII would most definitely have arrived here by river, preceded by a very large group of servants, courtiers, arriving in order to set up the palace in readiness for the king. We don't know whether Hampton Court was Henry VIII's favourite palace. It is certainly the one that is most famously associated with him now. Many of the other palaces that he owned and used in the London area have subsequently been lost. So Hampton Court is unique in that it has actually survived all the way through to the modern day.
The trip continues in the haunted gallery.
Now, put your hand up and tell me, if you can work it out, who might also be in this picture. Let's start with this person here. Edward, yes. You told me this morning that Jane Seymour died just a few days, in fact it was 12, after Edward was born. So this is another impossible picture. They couldn't have all been in the room at the same time. But Henry, we know from what he said, he loved her the most. So in this picture, which is called The Family of King Henry VIII, she's been included in the family, even though at the time he was not married to her and she'd already died.
We're encouraging students in a similar way as they're analysing a document at the National Archives to come here and analyse, to explore what this palace can actually tell them about the character and the court of Henry VIII.
After looking at the paintings, we arrived at the Great Hall, which great is really what it is. It is so fantastic. The children were overawed. They were inspired by the ceiling. The tapestries on the wall were incredible. It's so impressive just by the sheer scale of it.
This room is my bedroom. It is mine and 599 others. It is the bedroom of the yeomen and the clerks and the pages. The men and the boys who work for King Henry at Hampton Court Palace every night while the King was in residence would cram into this room on temporary beds, a bit like mattresses really, sacking or canvas mattresses stuffed with straw, and they would sleep in here.
But the Great Hall was also the venue for special occasions. And today's special occasion is the performance of Stanley Jr.'s Mask.
Let the joust begin.
We've had a number of children who say, oh, I didn't realise history could be this fun, but it's been really exciting. I've had a really enjoyable morning. That they can't believe that they've actually seen the original documents. They've been allowed to look at them very closely and to use them in the workshop. So that again is really special for us as education officers and for teachers as well, because it is bringing the subject to life. It's adding a new element, a new dimension to the subject.
In one rose now doth grow, thus through every stead. Grace the seed did sow, England now gather flowers.
The archives is used by many famous historians, from David Starkey to Peter Hennessy to Simon Sharma. These people all come in here and they've done their research, and the many thousands of school children that come in here, we know of many that have gone on to study history at university, and they then do actually come back and visit us once they're undergraduates and say quite how inspiring it was to see and handle original records.
Right shall the foxes chased, the wolves and bears also, that wrought have much care and brought England in woe.
Their reaction is just great. They get so much out of it, and it inspires them and wants them to find out. You know, so many of them want to go back now that they'll be dragging their parents there.
Upon us he doth reign, that maketh our hearts glad, as King most sovereign that ever England had.
Sometimes we think of the past as being another country. The past isn't another country. In many ways, the past is creating what we are today. So by giving students access to the primary sources, whether documents or buildings, they are being encouraged to form their own opinions, to write, if you will, their own history, to decide for themselves exactly what could have happened here 500 years ago.
God save him in his right. Amen. Amen.
You can find further information on this and other similar school trips by looking under the Resources and Support Materials section on our website, www.teachers.tv/worth the trip.